Welcome back to a new video. Hi. So what I'm showing you is the inside of my computer. I took the graphics card out. The processor is still in there. This is a little look into how to actually get a computer up and running. Now, by the looks of this is a bit tricky if you're someone who's unsure of what you're doing. And to be honest, I didn't have a clue what I was doing when I put together a computer. The first time I did it. After the first couple of times, it just gets a bit easier and easier. Except for down here, this little patch of wires. That is your front panel connector, which is set up to go up here. Now, as you can see, there's a fan covering the CPU, which is a good thing, obviously. So your slot of RAM is usually numbered as to where, like with this is in DIMM 1, DIMM, and then back here is DIMM slot 2. Up here where the CPU is obviously the CPU, the thermal paste, and then the heatsink and fan on top. There's a lot of different variants of heatsinks and fans. Mine just so happens to be a stock cooler from Intel. And there's the power supply unit. Always go with an 80 plus rated power supply unit, be it bronze, gold, silver, titanium, platinum. It goes bronze, silver, gold, platinum, then titanium. It's either platinum or diamond, I'm not sure which one. Either way. But that's the reason why you want to go with something higher than bronze is due to the fact that it's more efficient. This little thing right here, the 6+2 pin, if the camera will focus, there we go. That 6+2 pin is what connects to your graphics card if you have one, in which, in my case, I have a used Galaxy GTX 670, which is, it was a high-end card at one point. Now it's fairly cheap, I guess you could say, if you buy used, but if you buy new, you're paying $400 plus, whereas going with a new 1050, the GTX 1050, the smaller one that's about that big, a form factor one, is only a little over $160, depending on the time that you look at. Now, underneath this heatsink, there's a little bracket where the CPU is. You lift up the little lever, and then inside will be a bunch of pins, or it'll be just a breadboard grid. On that grid, you would place your processor if you have an AMD, or the pins if you have Intel. So the Intel processors do not have pins on them, the AMD processors do. Each has their own advantages and whatnot. Right here is my SATA cable going to the hard drive. This is just a cheap 160 gigabyte that I pulled out of an old computer. That. And then this wire connecting to SATA port 2 connects up to here, the CD DVD drive. Right here is the Molex and 3-pin connector for my fan. When you put the CPU in, you're going to have to go and put in, so the little gold triangle on the CPU matches up with the little gold triangle, or whatever color triangle it is that's on the board. when you do that, that'll make sure that you don't end up bending a pin on the inside of the socket, which will ruin the processor for Intel, or bending a pin on the processor for AMD. The RAM right here, which I'll pop it out, has a little notch in it. That little notch must be lined up with the little notch that's... why won't this thing focus? The little notch that's inside the slot. So you slide that into place, push it down until these little things pop shut. The CPU, you obviously have to open up the lever to open up the bracket on top, or AMD's zero insertion force socket. You just let it slide in and then push the lever back down. And your CPU is seated. You put a small amount of thermal paste on. The size of the CPU depends on the size of the thermal paste you'll be using. Well, I should say the amount of thermal paste you'll use is dependent on the size of the CPU. Now, when you put it in, usually a good thing for a LGA 1155 or one of the smaller processors out by Intel or AMD, you want a dot about the size of a grain of rice. What I'm doing, I should not be doing, but I am anyways, by spinning that fan. Cable management. Okay. On a case, as you can see with mine, I got my cables slid down into there, so that way they won't take up a bunch of space, and they can be as messy as you want back on the other side, as long as they don't go and get dust over here. Because loose cables like this big old mess right here are dust magnets. Your PCI 16, well, PCIe 16 slot, which is right next to the battery, which I'm flashing myself in the eye with the flashlight for using the reflection of the battery. You slide it down in, so obviously the little hook that's on the back of the graphics card, once I pick mine up, that little hook right there slides in and would get caught in here, and this will close up on its own. That would take up the expansion slots for however many you have. I had to take out a third one because of the fact that hooking these little guys up was not as easy as you would think. Your CPU and everything else gets placed onto the motherboard, and the motherboard must be put in on top of standoffs, which is like that one right there that I was just pointing at. Your standoffs will keep your motherboard from touching the case, which will make sure that you don't end up frying something. If you do fry something, your computer ain't working. Not ever again, because these things are sensitive to electric shock. So, all in all, it's not too hard to build a computer, as long as you're not doing something stupid. Now, you have many different things that can go into them, which includes SSDs, which replace your standard hard drives, your mechanical ones. They're much faster, they take up less space than this giant thing right here. And then you got M.2s, which would fit down onto the motherboard, take up zero electricity from, well, they take up, a bit of electricity, but not enough to really make much of a difference. And then things are extremely expensive, better waiting to buy one than going out and getting one right now for an M.2 SSD. Depending on the thing you're building, you could build a standard computer like this, or you could also build a server, which them things take up a lot more power, obviously. And they're gonna take 2 CPUs or 4 CPUs. For Intel, you're using Xeons. AMD, I'm not sure what you use. Your power supply has to be enough or more than what your computer will actually need. Generally going with more by a good 50 watts because they make, them go up by 50 watts each time is always a good thing to do because you don't want something to catch fire in your system. Funny little story is, I know of a person, he had some computers laying around at his place and decided, okay, I'll go and take a couple of them apart, see what they do. See how they work. He put it back together, didn't know where each part went, didn't know what plugged into what, ended up catching the computer on fire and tossed it outside so that way there he wouldn't end up burning down the house. This hasn't happened with me. I actually do have a bit of a history with taking things apart, different electrical things. I've gone with everything from microwaves to computers, obviously, televisions, the old CRTs, none of the newer LCDs, or I should say LED or OLED display televisions. Your size of your motherboard will definitely go and make your case decision, because if you go with a ATX case, you will have to go with a full-size ATX case. If you go with an ATX motherboard, full-size ATX case, anything smaller than that would fit into the full ATX case, but usually go into something like this, which is a mid-size. They even have extended ATX for those that are making graphics card mining rigs for Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, all kinds of things like that. In this case, this is just meant as to be a small form factor computer. You could go on different websites, find your different parts, but always start with the CPU and make sure it matches up with a good graphics card. Or if you're going with an AMD processor, you don't have to worry about a graphics card as much, because them are APUs, or all processing units, that will do graphics in your central processor, which Intel has not done. So Intel, you're stuck with whatever graphics are on the motherboard, or in this case getting a graphics card, which at this point in time can be expensive. This was built out of all different used parts except for the case, the power supply unit, the RAM, and well, that's it. I got this out of another computer, I got this out of another computer, I got this with the CPU, I got the graphics card free, I paid $35 for the processor. Again, thank you I just popped this off. That's fine. As I was saying, thank you again to the person who runs the channel, Bitcoin Related. Great guy, really friendly. Now, anybody can build a computer. Anybody can. I don't care if you're really young, really old, you can do it. Because the most complicated part is just figuring out the front panel, which everything is inside the motherboard manual for that little section there. Everything else goes where it looks like it would go. This set of plugs go to the USB on the front port, actually. This is a USB 3.0, which is giant. And why is this not screwed in all the way? Okay. Not okay. Yeah, that's just great. I just accidentally stripped that screw, which will be fine because I have other screws to replace it with. So that's really about it. Everything goes where it looks like it would go. And in some cases to where you're trying to go and use a graphics card and it has an HDMI port, but that port's broke, so you had to switch over to using DVI, but you don't want to use a DVI monitor. You could always just get one of these little things, which is just an adapter, plugs into the DVI, and turns it into HDMI. It's the same resolution and everything. It just works the same. It bypasses the small problem. Well, not really small problem, but still the problem that you're having.